When it comes to cholesterol, less is more, right? We have all been told over and over again since a young age that high cholesterol causes heart problems. It's common sense that fat makes you fat. Or is it? What actual evidence is there that having high cholesterol, or in particular, high LDL concentrations, increases your chance of getting heart disease? What is LDL cholesterol? You may be surprised to learn that studies available to us do not all point towards a common significant connection between high cholesterol and heart disease. Different studies point towards a number of conflicting conclusions, and ultimately the picture is a lot more complicated than most media on the topic would suggest. Let's get straight into this in this week's video. Before we even begin to answer the question of what is LDL cholesterol, we must first recap what cholesterol is. From my previous video, A Brief History of Fats, we covered cholesterol as being a molecule essential for all life on Earth. Cholesterol is a vital building block for many hormones that are essential in the control of systems in our body. For example, the immune system and the body's tissue repair function. The human brain contains approximately 30% of our total cholesterol reserves, and practically every one of our 40 trillion cells is capable of producing cholesterol. You may have heard of LDL cholesterol and HDL cholesterol, but did you know that there's actually only one molecule of cholesterol in our bodies and it remains consistent in its form? The terms LDL and HDL refer to organic molecules called lipoproteins used to transport cholesterol around our bodies. Lipoproteins form a crucial element in the cholesterol narrative, and more information will be presented on this later in the video. The focus on LDL cholesterol stems from outdated research by Ancel Keys and his diet heart hypothesis in the 1950s described in my previous video. The vilification of cholesterol has been updated several times by a change in focus on either the type of cholesterol or the experimental method used to calculate it. As soon as experimental evidence rose to discredit the diet heart hypothesis, the tale had to be twisted in such a way to defend established dogma. For example, several decades ago, the hype was around total cholesterol figures, which were derived from the number of cholesterol-carrying lipoproteins in the blood. Current blood tests smash up these lipoproteins to get to the cholesterol within. They then measure the amount of cholesterol that is carried within each lipoprotein. After decades of throwing medication at this number, the focus on total cholesterol dropped from favor as research demonstrated that higher total cholesterol correlated with longevity in the oldest people. What followed this embarrassing conclusion was the stigmatization of LDL, Low Density Lipoprotein, also known as bad cholesterol. An identical process of throwing meds at the LDL cholesterol numbers followed, some widely accepted such as statins, until this theory too was falsified. According to the British-Austrian philosopher Karl Popper, a theory in the empirical sciences can never be proven, but it can be shown to be false. If it cannot be falsified, it is not a scientific hypothesis. The word falsify is defined as to prove a statement or theory to be false. The reason I bring up the topic of falsification is the 1984 statement made by Nobel Award winners Michael Brown and Joseph Goldstein, which went, "The more LDL there is in the blood, the more rapidly atherosclerosis develops." That statement dominated research on atherosclerosis since. Atherosclerosis is basically the inflammation of the walls of our arteries. The 2002 study, however, by Dr. Ravenscoff falsified this claim made by the illustrious Nobel Award winners by highlighting the fact that degree of atherosclerosis and atherosclerotic growth were independent on the concentration or the change of LDL cholesterol in almost all studies. He goes on to state that the role of LDL cholesterol for atherosclerosis growth has been exaggerated, a finding with consequence for the prevention of cardiovascular disease. The unreliability of using LDL levels as a measure of health was also highlighted in a 2009 study in the American Heart Journal, which involved 137,000 patients in hospital with heart disease. The astonishing fact emerged that more than 72% of the atherosclerosis affected patients had LDL levels well below the average, and not due to taking lipid-lowering statin drugs neither. As mentioned earlier in the video, lipoprotein molecules are essential to the cholesterol narrative. Seeing as cholesterol cannot travel in the bloodstream by itself, evolution has designed these special lipoprotein boats to carry cholesterol around to its various destinations. We should now introduce cholesterol's co-passengers within the lipoprotein carrier boats: triglyceride. A triglyceride molecule is simply 3 fat molecules bonded to one glycerol or one sugar-like molecule. These triglyceride molecules can be created in our liver, ingested via fat-containing foods. Both cholesterol and triglycerides are hydrophobic, which means water-hating, and insoluble molecules too. However, their lipoprotein carriers are water-soluble, meaning they have the ability to travel freely in the blood. The lipoprotein molecules then carry their precious cargo to their designated locations and identify themselves according to their unique protein marker called the apolipoprotein. Now that we have the prerequisite knowledge on the topic, we can ask the question, what is LDL cholesterol? It is essentially one of 2 classes of lipoprotein molecule we are concerned with in terms of cholesterol. Within the LDL family, there are 3 subcategories. VLDL is the very low density lipoprotein, the original source of LDL created by our liver to transport cholesterol and triglycerides. LDL we know as the low density lipoprotein, which is produced as VLDL distributes its cargo and decreases in size. Finally, we have SD-LDL, the small dense LDL. It is this SD-LDL which has tarnished the LDL name. It is the product of LDL when it becomes damaged and oxidized through inflammatory pathways. The immune system then gets the thankless job of mopping up these distorted particles and often fails to do so efficiently. Starting from the top of this diagram, VLDL initially transports triglycerides to muscles for energy purposes. Once these molecules are released, VLDL becomes LDL, which continues to transport triglycerides and cholesterol to cells. Healthy LDL would then return to the liver to restart the process. If LDL runs into any issues, however, it can become damaged and turn into the dreaded SD-LDL that contributes towards atherosclerosis. The other class of lipoprotein alluded to earlier is known as HDL, which stands for High Density Lipoprotein and is often referred to as the good cholesterol. But is HDL good cholesterol? The answer is a most definite yes. When HDL concentrations in the blood are high, it is almost always associated with good news. HDL remains a consistent and intriguing indicator in the cholesterol narrative. There are many drugs which can successfully decrease levels of LDL cholesterol, but none yet that increase levels of HDL cholesterol. The HDL molecule starts off as a simple protein, which then takes in triglycerides and cholesterol, which it carries to complete its vital functions. The many crucial tasks of HDL cholesterol are endless and would require a separate video for itself. However, a quick summary consists of swapping cholesterol and triglyceride molecules in and out of VLDL and LDL particles to balance the system, delivering cholesterol to the rare types of cell which cannot manufacture it on their own, and removing cholesterol from areas it ought not to be, for example arterial walls, and much more. HDL is truly a miracle worker and evolutionary engineering at its best. If we refer back to the 2009 study highlighted earlier, over 90% of the patients afflicted with atherosclerosis had HDL levels well below the recommended levels. The ineffectiveness of using LDL levels as an indicator for coronary artery disease is quite clear in the literature. A very recent review article published in August of 2018 disputes claims from statin-biased research and claims that the fact that high LDL concentration is beneficial in terms of overall lifespan has been ignored by researchers who support the lipid hypothesis. HDL cholesterol, despite being a slightly more accurate indicator of overall well-being, doesn't display the full picture neither. We need a more robust and reliable system in place. As we mentioned earlier, traditional lipid panel tests prescribed by your doctor break apart the lipoprotein to analyze the number of cholesterol and triglyceride molecules lipoproteins carry. This test does not look at the amount or size of each kind of lipoprotein at all, despite the small dense LDL being responsible for most arterial damage. Luckily, the advanced lipoprotein test can do just that. Despite this, researchers conclude that LDL levels alone do not provide enough consistent data to be a reliable data point. It is not all doom and gloom, however. A surprisingly simple cholesterol ratio calculation reigns supreme in assessing real coronary artery risk. Cholesterol ratios, what do they mean? These ratios can be easily calculated from numbers attained from standard cholesterol tests administered by your doctor. They truly describe how your cholesterol transport systems are working and reliably reflect the underlying issues of vascular disease. This was reported as early as 1997 by Dr. Gaziano, who states that, furthermore, the ratio of triglycerides to HDL was a strong predictor of myocardial infarction. There are many different ratios which display a more accurate indication of arterial damage than common LDL level tests. These include, but are not limited to, your triglyceride to HDL ratio, total cholesterol to HDL ratio, LDL to HDL ratio. A quick Google search can help you find websites that calculate the ratios and the significance of such numbers. This brings us to the end of this video. If you can answer the 3 questions on screen and get them all right, comment below. Please don't forget to rate the video with a like or dislike and subscribe if you got any value from the video.